Alright. Just getting back from a gamer convention. I gotta start plugging my thing. Doing LitCon down on South Beach. LitCon, everybody, LitCon. South Beach 2019, June 15th. Hit me up. Email me. Vendors. If you got a book, you got a comic book, you want to go to making a film. If you're a filmmaker, you want to make your get a good story, build on a brand, find a book that's already got an audience, an author. This is the place for you. All right, that's my pitch. Now, what I want to talk about, I'm never going to do that again. That's too long. What I want to talk about today is kind of my dumpster diving. You know, I started off in my creative exploration at 11 years old as a DJ, a hip-hop DJ. And, you know, I used to DJ. I started back on DJing on TV trays, okay? I'm just letting you know. I had a party in TV trays and people was bumping into it, skipping my records, but I'm a middle school student, so cats didn't mind. It was like, yo, Jeff is doing my party, whatever. And I did it all the way up into high school, and I stopped DJing because it was expensive and I was mediocre. But I would have been a good DJ, shoot. I can keep up with DJ envies and a lot of the people now, you know, because it's not a lot of blending, it's not a lot of scratching. Anyway, that's how I started. I started off as a DJ in this whole era of creativity. And one of the things that we used to do in the early DJing years in 83, 82, that's when I started. I'm old. We used to dumpster dive. We used to go, not dumpster dive, that sounds like a poor man thing, but it's very similar to what we did. We used to go into the record stores and find records. We used to go into our parents' archives, our family members, and even later people used to go into Salvation Armies and find old records with beats and use those beats to keep our parties going. All right, or as producers, which DJs later became, they would use those beats to make records, make other records. So you would digging in the crates. That's what people would do to get their records out. So now, how does that affect me as a writer, or how does that something I do as a writer? Well, I'm an old spirit in sci-fi. But I'm not old, so I didn't start reading really novels until I was 30, till I had my son, till I moved to Miami. Then I started really picking up books that weren't self-help, you know, African history, and were novels. You know, I had read Coldest Winter Ever. Actually, that was one of the early ones, but before that I read, you know, I could count the books. Autobiography of Malcolm X, Waiting to Exhale. You know, those are some of the few books that I read that were novels. And catching up to sci-fi now, I am now still just reading like some of the old golden age books of sci-fi, the 70s, the 60s, you know, 80s was pretty, you know, still around today. You can still read some of the 80s stuff now, but that 70s, that 60s, you know, Dinosaur Planet, okay? You know, I Fell in Love in Mars. That's kind of cheesy, but they had stories like that. And this is the Isaac Asimov and a Hinland time period. And when I go to conventions, sci-fi conventions, there are those readers that are still around. I mean, these people are 60, 70 years old. They read these books. Some of them got to be older than that, but they read these books when they were children. And I didn't really have that experience. However, we have now this new wave of sci-fi writing. It's not just black sci-fi. We have urban sci-fi. We have romance sci-fi, and all of those different elements. And they bring a modern trope to it that's not the same. It's different than that 60s and 70s. So when I go to the bookstore, of course I'm reading my contemporaries. You know, I'm keeping up with what we're writing, especially in the black sci-fi world, the mainstream sci-fi world. I'm reading those people. I'm keeping up with those writers, you know, Baen Books, Tor, you know, Orbit, all those sci-fi publishers, and then of course our black independent writers. I'm keeping up with N.K. Jemisin, Andy Okafor, David Anthony Durham, Nisi. So all of those mainstream published black authors I'm also reading, as well as my independent people on blacksci-fi.com and State of Black Science Fiction. I keep it up, keep it up with that. However, the sci-fi questions that I get influenced from and how I find it, I write based on a remixed 60s and 70s sci-fi question. One of the things I always used to complain about in sci-fi, especially black sci-fi, was, where always characters came from slavery. Even Octavia Butler really had a big impact on black people's slavery experience in a lot of our stories. Now, I have no problem with being influenced by slavery with my stories, or influenced by the African American experience, which is deeply rooted in slavery, or our relationship to European people is through that of slavery, which is different than on the continent of Africa, and as an African American is different than the Caribbean, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Trinidad. All of those experiences are different than the African American experience. So I'm with all. It's also different than the British, the African British experience. So I'm with all of that. So when I get a book, I can't remember, Clay's Ark or something like that. These are older books. I take those stories of space curiosity. It's more than just Star Trek, because Star Trek is a federation, and there are many times they're going out there to learn, and they bring modern science and interpretations with them. The 70s books sometimes blur fantasy. It's more fantastic than Star Wars, but very much like it. It's like Jupiter Ascending, Valorian, John Carter. Okay, those type of stories are some of the stories that I allow myself to get influenced by. Of course, I like Heinlein's Starship Troopers is a big influence on me. But I read those stories, and it may not just be, people living on Mars, or people living on Jupiter, or people living on Venus. The problem that I think a lot of us have, not black sci-fi writers, let's just talk about sci-fi writers in general, is that we get bogged down with our knowledge of space, and we don't speculate and dream out of the realistic possibilities anymore. So our knowledge and scientific awareness sometimes confines our sci-fi speculation. You can follow me on that. We don't feel if it can't happen, we should write that it happened. So the only way we're going to write something is like, how are we going to write about people living on Mercury? It's too hot. Of course, no life form. So we would conform that life form to being off of a very hot existence, used to real high heat. Some of the 70s writers weren't concerned with that. You know what I'm saying? They, on their planet, dinosaurs talked. Okay? In today's sci-fi, we wouldn't write that. That would be really full fantasy. And maybe the fantasy subgenre of sci-fi wasn't fully developed in the 70s, and I have to probably check with a historian on that, but I just noticed the observation that this didn't happen. And part of what I write is allowing that to happen. Allow my stories to have some of those fantastical elements. Not always. I'm going more in that direction, and that's why I do it, because that's why I go read these books and study their stories, is because I want to do more of that. So that's part of it as well. So I'm just writing. I'm just saying, this blog I'm on South Beach, so I'm running this blog on South Beach, which I should turn the camera around so y'all can see how nice it is down here. But I'm doing this little video blog because I just want to share little elements of, you know, how I get my creative ideas. Of course, you know, I watch movies and television and read comic books, and I'll get inspiration from the contemporary products. But I also get inspired by some of the stuff from the 70s, because that's when we asked big questions. That's when our speculation game was real high. I don't see our speculation game always that high now. So that's really it. I mean, we speculate because it's science fiction. It's all speculation. But how far do we speculate? I don't know, you know, and that's really where I want to take it. I want to go some more. So I originally, when I wanted to talk about this, I wanted to have some of the books with me. But I think you can gather what I'm saying. I saw John Jennings' presentation on comic books, and I was like, now I know how I want to do my sci-fi presentation. So I'm going to go and use a lot of examples. So you'll see some of these examples. I'll figure out how to put my presentation together. But anyway, this is actually not a long blog, which is good because I don't want to go on too long. But yeah, that's really what I'm blogging about today is, you know, where I get my ideas from, why I read the books from the 60s and 70s, which really didn't have a good portrayal of black people in there, or even a presence of black people at all. So yes, there's a little bit of blaxploitation influence in there, where I want to make everything black, or at least want to bring a multicultural element to it. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out to you. But thank you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.